Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Welcome back. Once again, it's another amazing episode of your favorite podcast. And that can only mean one thing. We know it because I say it every week. Episode 255 of Keepin It Rio is here. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited for today's episode. This is one that I've been wanting to do for a couple months now, and the stars have aligned. We found a way to make it happen today, and I think this is going to be a very good episode. I think we're going to be very positive and upbeat and energetic because that's what I know our guest for today to be. So, with no hesitation whatsoever, it is an honor to welcome to episode 255, Mrs. Priscilla Hale to the show. Welcome to the show, my friend. How goes it?
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be with y'all today.
It's going to be fun. I can assure you of that. So I always love to just kind of kick these things off with the age-old, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just kind of run with it. We've got a very diverse audience on Keepin It Rio, worldwide, dare I say, and lots of different backgrounds, lots of different, educational things and walks of life. So we're going to definitely reach a diverse audience today and help as many as we can. So let's figure out how to make that happen. What do you say?
Oh, sounds good. So yes, a little about myself. I have been married for 27 years, 4 children, grew up small town, lived in the city for a big portion of life. And now today getting to be with you, Chuck, is really special because this meetup is only by your podcast also, and which I find so fascinating. But a little bit more of my story is just and sharing, as you were mentioning with everyone, all of our lives are so vast and different, yet we all have something beautiful to offer. And my story begins, I was adopted and then grew up in a family loving home, very special and thankful for that. And I have got to meet biological family, and that's been a fascinating journey. And so it just really inspired me when you said your audience is so vast, because I believe our lives impact so many people far beyond what we can ever even imagine. And every day we have something to offer someone, as just a smile or a word of encouragement. And we each get to do it so uniquely.
I love that. And I agree with you 100%. I think that one of the most important things that I do is every single day, I try to find somebody that I can out nice. And it's tough sometimes. Like if you go to Chick-fil-A, it's hard to out nice people that work at Chick-fil-A, but I've won that battle many times. And it's like, you know what? You don't know what people are going through in life. You don't understand through someone else's perspective because we all see things through our own eyes and we're all going through things. People handle things differently. And I've always just been under the impression that, you know what, if we can just make somebody smile or laugh or just feel a little bit better about whatever may be going on, even if it's not something that's apparent on the surface, then it was a pretty good day. What do you think?
Yes, I totally agree. And part of my story too, I battled with depression and hopelessness for a big period of time. Just like, does life matter? Does this, what's the purpose? What's that? All of those questions that many of us wrestle with. And in our world today, there's so many things that are just filling us with negative information or negative messaging. And that's where I started. Honestly, I just started diving into the Bible. Like, God, if you say you're real and abundant life is real and all of that, how do we live that? Like, how do we really have that? And as I've discovered that, I just began to understand, as you were saying, like out nicing someone, just when you share kindness with somebody, it just lifts your spirit too. And it just creates an environment of good where, while there's all these negative messages out there, we get to bring a message of life and hope or a smile or a piece of joy, right? And our lives just have so much impact far beyond anything we can understand.
It's absolute truth. And one thing I've also noticed is that the way that things happen in life have a direct correlation to the way that you put the energy out there. And they always say you give what you put out, you receive what you put out to the world, and so on and so forth. And I find that to be very true. And the craziest part about it is it's actually easier to be nice to people than it is to be mean. It's easier to smile than it is to frown. And that's one of those age-old things that you just think about it and you realize, that's so true. Some of the things that we harbor on the inside and some of the things that we dwell on or that we really let bother us are so trivial and insignificant that you would look at it if it was someone else telling you these things and you think, man, what are you worried about that for? But we all do this and we all have these ways of coping. And I like to learn a little bit about how other people have come through these things because, depression, self-doubt, all these things are common if you're trying to do things in life, if you're trying not to stay in one place, if you're trying to, break out of a shell, if you're trying to do something with your career, your family. And, I love to see how other folks handle that because I know that sometimes, maybe I don't handle things the correct way or the most healthy way, but let's talk a little bit about that. So we've got a broad audience. I think every single human being on this planet is going to be able to relate to what we're going to talk about because we've all been there at some point in time. Some of us are there now, and maybe we can help somebody get out of that. So let's chat a little bit about what happens when you find yourself in depression and how we go about finding ways to get ourselves out of that and back into a positive mindset.
Yes. Well, when, as you were mentioning, or just first of all, just taking a hold of, you have a skill to offer, you have a gift, and you and I have completely different gifts. We're going to touch people completely different because one man, woman, that'll touch a different group, you to touch in a different way. And just industry wise, I am not in the same industry as you. So we get to reach different people. So sometimes it's just coming back and reminding yourself that no, my gifts are important. What I share is important. And every single one of us is. And if we know, like if something would happen to any of us, someone would be sad. Someone would be sad we weren't there. And so that's one starting place of knowing you matter and the work you do matters and you can have impact, like you said, going through the Chick-fil-A drive-through, or as you do, serving people with a roof, or maybe me as a mom, or I speak to women's groups. So it's that kind of thing where we're touching people's lives and have the power. Like that's something I didn't realize so profoundly, how much power each one of us holds, how much power every single life holds. And when we get in those places of downcast soul, just sadness or whatever it might be, sometimes we forget, like, no, you are really important. And yes, the work you do, maybe nobody said thank you today, or maybe nobody took notice, but somebody felt it. Somebody felt that you showed up and performed in excellence or did the best job you could do, or that you offered a smile. And I think that's one thing to hold on to, just that, hey, no, what I do really does impact other people.
Yeah. And, there's so many different ways that we can spin off of that. And I've got a couple different directions we'll go with our conversation throughout this podcast. But I really like that. And the first thing I always ask about this is, okay, we've discovered something within ourselves, something that we don't feel right about, something that we know probably could use an adjustment, and we know that we're probably not living the very best life we could be. So it takes a lot of courage, because I think in a lot of cases when someone gets comfortable, they surround themselves with people that are also comfortable. And one of the phenomenons that I've seen throughout the course of time is one person wants to get themselves out of a situation. They want to get themselves out of a trap or a mindset, and maybe the people around them don't. And rather than being supportive and saying, hey, go get it, you can do it, they try to pull you back in. And this is something I've experienced in my own life. So I kind of have a feeling for how that works. And I wonder, something like this happens where, someone's trying really hard. They're probably susceptible to falling back into those old habits, especially early on, because it is easy to get discouraged when you're trying to make changes in your life, when you're trying to see positive things. And then you've got negative people who are typically the ones that are closest to you, because they don't want to expose the fact that they're not doing anything and that they're not trying to improve. So what are some things that you could think of, or some of the things that you do to help people when they maybe get to that point where they know, got to do something, they take action, they're proud of themselves, and then they've got to start battling those demons from within, literally their inner circle?
Yes. And so, yes, that inner circle is so important, right? It goes back to maybe even kindergarten, where it's like, oh, whatever friends you hang out with, that's what you become like, or that's what, influences your life. And I have found having a small text group, and I do have a little text group of friends, that if I'm having a bad day, I reach out to them, and we just know we come alongside of each other and encourage. And oftentimes, we don't even say, all the details. We'll just say like pray or having a bad day, and they will just immediately chime in. So it could be as simple as a text, right? Something that's in our hand. Don't even have to spend a lot of time talking or explaining, but just get a group of friends. And it could just be you and one other person, or maybe you do have 3 others that you could circle up with. And just when you're having a bad day, reach out and they will come alongside, because all of us have bad days. And with that, I have to say, yesterday, I did not handle the conversation the way I wished I would have. And I walked away from it really kind of depressed, just like, why did I not handle that better? And another portion of that staying in forward motion, going towards goals, is extending yourself grace. We're all human. I have yet to meet a perfect human. I am definitely not a perfect human. And so it's that aspect of grace. We see such glossy images, right? Everything is photoshopped, or now we've got AI images and all this stuff. But realizing that day to day isn't perfect, and that's okay. We get to do it messy. We get to say, you know what, girl or guy, like, you messed it up, but try again. Just try again. Just receive that lesson. Like for me, I was like, wow, I didn't handle that conversation the way I wish I would have, but I can do better now, because now I understand when I walk into that conversation or with that group, I know I need to prepare my mind in a different way, or take a deep breath first. And it is just giving yourself grace, even in the mistakes, and knowing that's not the end. I think hopelessness and depression push us towards like, well, that's the end. I messed it up. But the true message is, no, there's hope. You get to do another day. We have a gift in the next minute, in the next hour. I think sometimes that's really important as well, to remember we don't have to just start over January 1st. We can start over in 5 minutes if we need to, and just receiving that grace of, I get to try again.
I think that's probably the most valuable lesson I've ever learned in life. I've been so hard on myself since, literally, you just said kindergarten. I mean, probably my entire life, I've always been really hard on myself. And I've always thought, people tell you that you're special. And I know every parent in the world tells their kids they're special, but I believed mine. And I was trying my hardest to do, as best I could with everything. And you always fear that you're going to disappoint people. And for me, throughout the course of my life, there have been instances where that's hit me pretty hard, where I thought, that was definitely not the way I envisioned this to turn out. It didn't work. I didn't help anybody in this case. It was a failure. And you start to really get down on yourself. But one thing I do realize as well is you have to realize that it's nothing's perfect. Nobody has lived this day prior to today. Nobody has lived tomorrow yet. None of us are going to get to live yesterday again. So we have to learn in the moment. We have to be able to pivot and adapt and understand that, just because everything looks like it should be perfect, it doesn't always work out that way. And the way that you handle those things is really what develops you as a person. And I think give you the perspective as you continue to grow and develop as a person, that it is okay not to be perfect. And Lord knows I accept that fact very freely now. Years gone by, I would be so hard on myself that it would be, literally you'd be looking at yourself in the mirror saying, what an idiot. You're so stupid. Why do you do that? Why can't you get this right? Why can't you figure it out? And now I know, hey, I did the best I could, and I feel much better about things. And I'll say this is kind of a personal thing that I want to say real quick, if I may. You and I are directly correlated through our Rio Blanco roofing. Your husband, Chris, is the co-owner with myself of the company. And I think that you guys are a prime example for me as to what could happen when you kind of get into a little bit of a rut, but you're still a good person. And I do believe that even if you get into a down situation, that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And, Chris and I met completely by happenstance one day. And here we are almost 2 years later. We're co-owners of a roofing company together. We went and played golf yesterday, had a great time, and just laughed and really had a wonderful day. And I think to myself, I didn't see that coming the day that it happened. I had no idea. I was going to have lunch with some random dude that reached out to me on social media, and I told Chris the same thing. In that moment, I was very concerned about my own future because I realized that there are a lot of things that I am not very well skilled at, and a lot of them are pretty important. So I needed to find someone that could help me with the other side that I didn't understand, and also someone that I could get along with that wouldn't be a complete opposite, so that we'd be butting heads all the time. And that's exactly what happened, So I think if it hadn't been for a positive mindset, I probably could have quit this roofing company 10 different times. But the belief that everything is going to work out, and the fact that you just keep moving forward, you just keep pushing forward and saying, you know what, it's going to work because I know I'm a good person. I know I'm doing the right thing. I know that my mindset is correct, and stuff just kind of happens, falls out of the sky. So I appreciate that. And I think that, having those moments in life where you realize it's going to be okay, things are going to be good, are really uplifting and they're eye-opening. And I like to ask people who, go and literally help others to kind of dig through this murky water that we call life and figure out how to make the most of it. Tell me a little bit about the first time that you had somebody that told you a problem and you helped them, and they came back and said, you know what, Priscilla, you saved my day, you saved my life, you saved my world, whatever it is. And it made you realize this is something that I'm going to probably have a pretty good passion for and want to pursue as a profession.
Yeah, I think for me, it probably began with that little circle of the text message group that I mentioned earlier. That group, I began to share things that I had learned about emotions, about heart healing, about soul wounds, all that stuff that we go through on this earth. And I realized what I was sharing with them was inspiring them. And it also was, I didn't go and fix it for them. I just shared a bit of help, and then they were able to take it. And I think sometimes in life, like, we're just trying to go fix something, or, let me just make this right or perfect, right? Get in that perfection zone again. And it's not. It's literally, like you said, taking one step forward, and it can be the smallest thing. And so as I kind of continue to grow with these groups of ladies, and we've moved around Texas a lot, so I've gotten to experience a lot of different groups of people that have been just amazing in my heart, but I was also able to share to them. And I did so much studying on heart healing and soul wounds and overcoming regarding my adoption stuff. There is so much backstory to that, but that was the catalyst of where I started understanding, like, oh my gosh, all of us have walked through some kind of heart wound. Somebody's hurt our feelings, right? We can even take it back to kindergarten, like you said earlier, or going on in life and then going, yeah, that happened, but I can keep going and I can receive healing for that. And I can go forward even better, even stronger, because everything that was part of, back to your original question too, is whatever we've gone through is not wasted. We get to then share it with somebody else and come alongside them and say, hey, we could even just take business. I was afraid to make a video on social media, but I did it, and you can too, or, whatever it might be, or make that phone call to meet up with somebody that you wanted to talk to, or, is it put something out there that if you've written something and you want a blog post back to that, or whatever it might be, being able to come alongside someone and say, I was terrified to do that, or I was really broken because of that, but hey, there's hope. Like, you can keep going. I've kept going, and you can too.
Yeah. And you know what? That's such a beautiful example. And I'll tell you this. I remember the very first time I did a social media like video type thing. And I caught flack from the guy that I used to work for. He was, making fun of me and this and that for doing it. And it took me probably 50 times before I was able to hit the send button. And look at me now, folks. You can't get rid of me. So you do the first one. That's always the hardest one. And once you're done with the first one, it gets much easier. And you stop to think so much about what everybody's going to think or how do I look? I mean, this is what I got. I can't do anything about it. So I realize I got to rely on my personality, and that's kind of spotty at times too. But the moral of the story is you put yourself out there, you do it. You're going to get a lot of support from people. You're going to get some detractors, obviously. And those are always the people that are doing less. And, the key thing that I always remember is you never see successful people knocking or mocking on unsuccessful people. It's always the other way around. So if you got people detracted from you, that's also a positive. You've got to be able to look at it that way. And I think that life can be good. So I do want to ask you about this. And if this is something that you don't want to talk about, I understand, but you just said you've got a very unique story where, as a young child, you were adopted, you grew up with a family that was very loving and supportive and all that. And then later on, I'm assuming in life, you were able to make contact with your biological family. I've never really had a conversation with anyone that's been through that. And I always kind of wonder, what was that like for you growing up, number one? And then that moment when you knew, I'm going to meet someone that, for whatever reason I'm not with, and we've got the closest bond of them all. What are some of the feelings that you go through when you experience that as that's a life-changing moment for sure?
Yes, it's I'll try to be concise on that because it's very much a roller coaster ride. Or it was for me. I won't say that's the case for everyone, but it was really interesting. As families, like I said, nothing's perfect, right? And we discovered there was another adopted child in our family line that ended up being like my dad's half brother that no one knew about. So it was wild. At a Thanksgiving gathering, he was there and he just looked at me and said, "Go find them. You don't know how much time you have left." Because he only got to know my grandmother for a couple of years before she passed away. And so that was kind of a catalyst. And I feel like that was a gift from God for me because it was one of those, like, you want to be loyal to your family, but you have this wondering like in the back of your mind. And for me, I was one that just stuffed that all down. Like, we're not going to talk about that. Like, and I had really deep grief about it. And some of the studies I have done and books I've read, infants actually grieve when they're leaving their birth mother and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a very complex thing. And I will say I'm very much for adoption. I'm very thankful to be here. But it's complicated, like life is complicated. And so then that being given what I would say permission in front of everybody, he spoke this in front of my whole family. So it kind of gave me permission to go search. And then when I did send it out, because back when I was adopted a very long time ago, it was closed adoption. So all my papers were de-identified, which means there were no names on anything. It just said like male, female, size, weight, like that kind of stuff. So I had no names, no anything. So when I sent it through the adoption agency, it was a bit of like, well, I don't even know if, I really felt like I was throwing it out in the sky. Like, maybe it'll land somewhere, maybe it won't, I don't know. But then in 3 weeks, or in 2 weeks, I guess, the adoption agency called back and was like, "Oh, we've contacted your birth mother and she's open to talk to you." And I was just like, "Huh? Yeah, what?" And so it was a fascinating journey that I went quickly. I really expected it to take like 6 months or something for them to even find. And one of those, we have all these expectations in life and there's all these unmet expectations. So I went through a whole lot of that in that journey, and it was lovely. And I'm so blessed. My biological family was open arms. Not everyone's are. I did get to meet him, but then I went through, I feel like the whole childhood stage, like the first time I met my birth mother, and she was leaving to go home. I was almost like a 2-year-old wanting to like grab hold of her leg, like, no, don't go. And then it was almost like I went through all the ages and stages of life for quite a period of time. I've known them for 15 years now. And so it has definitely been a journey of continually taking that step of faith forward. That was one of those earlier when we were talking about that. Sometimes to do something new, you have to step out into something you have no idea how it's going to turn out. And then knowing, like, if it turns out good or bad, you will be able to work through that and you will be stronger for it, no matter how it goes, because now you're equipped in a whole nother area that you wouldn't have been.
Yeah, and you don't realize some of the things that you can make it through, everything that you go through in life so far to this point, we've survived it all. And some of these things can be so fearful and just, oh my gosh, like you say, that's got to be a moment in life where you're thinking to yourself leading up to this meeting, what if they really don't like me? What if they really don't want to say hi? What if this is just a bad trick and it's not going to work out? And then you're going to have to revert all the way back to those early times and experience everything again. So I think that's so beautiful. And I will say this, I think it takes a ton of courage to put your child for adoption if you realize that maybe the scenario that you're in at that time in life is not going to be the best for a child. I think giving a child the opportunity to have the best life possible is very respectable. And I think that sometimes people don't get the respect and appreciation for that they deserve. And then, like you say, to be able to go back all these years later and kind of have that relationship and life kind of go full circle, that's so beautiful. So I love that. Now, let's talk a little bit about business, okay? That's such a beautiful story, and it leads into, okay, I've experienced a lot of things. I've gone through a lot of things. I've gone through the emotions. I've upped and down and left and right and all these things in life. And I realize now, I'm speaking of you, obviously, that this is something I have passion for. I like helping other people. I like coaching people through experiences potentially that I've been through and helping them avoid pitfalls or things. Let's talk a little bit about how you decide to start doing professionally and, these early initial things, because one thing that all professionals have in common is we all started with nothing. And there's always that first ray of hope or sunshine. And it usually comes after a lot of, oh my gosh, what have I done? Have I made a huge mistake? Am I going to go bankrupt? Am I going to be eating, cans of beans and hot dogs for the rest of my life? And then you have a breakthrough and everything starts going well. So let's talk a little bit about your decision at first to help folks with things that they need help with and to be a consultant and guide through, some of these things. What led you to make that decision to go all in?
Well, okay, so it's kind of a funny story. I got a degree in fashion merchandising when I graduated from college. And then I started a company where I did wardrobe consulting. I was helping ladies with professional wardrobe. I even spoke to business groups on employee dress code, all that kind of stuff. And it was truly, while that was an outward focus, it was truly like how you present yourself. You get to show up the best you in whatever attire you're in, and how you can do that good first impression. So that's kind of where it started. And I had just a love of fashion when I was a child, like my whole life. And so it started there. And then I had 2 children at the time. And then the Lord proceeded to give us 2 more children. So we have 4, as I mentioned earlier. Well, the season shifted and I realized I was being asked to step away. I just realized and understanding God was like, be home and be more present with your kids. And our oldest, high functioning autism spectrum kid. So that was that. And then having littles, and there's a big age gap in mine. So I had all the different ages and stages happening at the same time in our house. So I stepped away from that for a little while. And honestly, it was in 2006. My son was in a really bad, well, he was in an accident. He fell and broke his femur. And that was a really traumatic experience. Things did not go so well when we got to the hospital. And that really shook me. And then he's ended up doing great now. But that happened, and that kind of also unfolded a rock bottom for me, because I had all of those emotions from childhood that had been stuffed down for so long. And at that point in time, as you mentioned earlier, that desperately striving for perfection and desperately trying to prove my self-worth. Like, I'll start this company and prove I'm worthy and I'll do good, and that. And then it was like, then when my child gets hurt, and at the time it was like financial stuff going on, just everything was crumbling around me. And that was in 2006, and had a total rock bottom experience to where like I felt pretty lifeless, pretty much like my soul just left my body. Like the night he came home from the hospital, I was like, I've ruined everything. I'm a terrible mother. Like everything's bad. That's where my mindset was. And the next day, a neighbor whose husband was deployed often, we lived in San Antonio in a military area at the time. So her husband was deployed. She hung out with me a lot and was a dear friend of mine. She's like, hey, let's go to Bible study. And I was like, Bible study, what's that going to fix? But because her husband was gone, and I'm like, I'm her friend, I need to show up with her. I went with her to that. And God just started speaking to my heart. Like, no, you have great value and I have great plans for you. And so once I started discovering all the heart healing available, it changed. Like I started just pouring over the scriptures with everything I had, because I'm like, if this abundant life thing's real, and if there's really heart healing, and if I can really have a better life, then where's it at? And so that was my journey, and I just continued in that. So then fast forward a couple of years, my children are older now, or they're kind of, a lot of them doing their own thing now. I still have some at home, but they just inspired me to keep going in a new way then. And I realized I want to serve ladies. I do particularly speak at women's groups on just how you keep going, how you keep taking a step of faith, how you surrender those heart hurts and receive help for that. And there is help. And so it's just been a fascinating journey of what God's led me through too. And knowing each season of our life is different. And I think sometimes we're told, oh, do this thing and you're just going to do it and be successful at that, and it's going to stick. But truly our life is in seasons, just like our calendar has seasons, our life does too. And just knowing every season is so valuable, whether you're stepping into something or stepping out of something or redirecting, right? Sometimes it's the pivot. Even if you are in the same business or organization, whatever it is, sometimes you're called to pivot. And knowing that that's not a bad thing, that it's an opportunity for a new beginning, instead of like, yes, you can grieve or be sad, like, oh, that ended, but also have the hope and openness to receive a new beginning in whatever new season. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is in stepping into a new season. And the last 40 days, I'm not one that really does the give something up for Lent thing, but this year I felt like I want to make a positive video every day. And so I did for the last 40 days in a row. And that was one thing too. It proved to my brain, you can do this, you can show up. Because like we said earlier, sometimes posting on social media is like, oh my gosh, but it helped my brain to know like, no, you can do this, you really can. And I just want to share one other quick thing about how I've been stepping forward. It's changing my vocabulary. I didn't realize how much negative self-talk I had and how many just negative things I would let out of my mouth, and understanding like our words are so powerful. And back to that original, like the conversation I had yesterday, I wish I would have chosen more positive words than I did, but I know I did that so I can just receive the grace and step forward. But when I became aware of my vocabulary in my life, it made a huge difference in the decisions I made. It affected every relationship I had. And so that's one thing I really want to encourage you on, is just pay attention to your vocabulary. you don't, and do not knock yourself down if you say things you wish you hadn't. Just take hold of that and go, oh, wow, I'd really like to speak differently there. Or I want to encourage myself instead of talk bad about myself. Like you were saying earlier, you have too, just like, why did you screw that up? Why did you do that wrong? Instead of like, wow, I see a mistake was made and I'm going to do it differently this next time. And I found anyway, when I've done that, I may not get it perfect even the next time or the next time or the next 5 times, but I do a little bit of improvement each time. And that's so hope-giving and life-giving. That's like, no, I can take one more step better than I did the day before, one more word better, one more action better. And I found that to be so empowering. So that's what I try to share with others on their journey, as I have done different seminars and put together things like that to help just one day, just adding one little thing in grace, of course, because we all make mistakes.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that is the most powerful message that you'll hear. And it's so true. I've had so many people tell me this over the years, and I observed myself, I guess, with a grain of salt, right? Like, I kind of know what I'm talking about when I say these things. And a lot of times I say things just to get a reaction. I like to be the funny guy that makes jokes and whatnot. But I had a guest on the podcast maybe about 2 years ago that reached out to me after the fact and said, man, I was looking at one of your videos you did, and you said something about just being a dumbass roofer. And he's like, dude, you're not a dumbass roofer. Why would you say such a thing about yourself? And I was like, well, I'm just joking, and it was just kind of tongue in cheek or whatever. And then I started looking at this and I thought, you know what? I say that kind of stuff a lot. And maybe somewhere deep down inside, there's a little bit of belief that something's not quite right. And I've made a very, very strong effort over the last 6 to 8 months to really cut that out as best I can. And it translates over into everything in life. And this is a crazy example, but just yesterday, your husband, Chris, and I, we were playing golf at a golf outing here in San Antonio for some roofing companies. And this is where it always really hits me. I go out there and I start doing kind of, not that great. And I start getting kind of frustrated. And then I start getting a little bit upset. Then I start getting really mad, right? And it kind of goes in a little bit of a cycle. And when I get really mad, this is when I realize I walk up to this thing and I already have defeated myself. I've already decided that something's going to go wrong. I'm going to do something that's going to make me look stupid, whatever. And guess what ends up happening? I end up doing something to look kind of stupid or foolish or whatnot. Luckily, none of us are professionals. But then I look at the other side of the spectrum, and there's one in particular yesterday that just comes right into my mind when I think about this. And we're standing there and I said, hey guys, you know what? I made some bold proclamation because that's my big thing. I'm going to take on the world. I said, I'm going to hit the golf ball over this giant tree. And there was a gap like about this big. And I didn't even really care if it was going to work or not. I was just trying to make light of the situation. That's exactly what happened. I hit it. It was so perfect. It went right through the thing. And in that moment, as I was walking back, I thought, why don't you tell yourself more often that something good's going to happen rather than saying, I'm going to drop the ball. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not funny enough, whatever. Because it seems like whenever you convince yourself of that, it tends to work out. So huge life lesson. The way that we speak to ourselves is probably more important than the way that anybody else could ever speak to us. And I've always been my harshest critic, and I've been very good about, maybe I'm a little too lenient on myself now, but I've always been good about, hey, you don't have to be perfect, buddy. So I appreciate that. And kind of segues into the next section of our conversation here. And that is, you mentioned, trying to reach people, trying to help people, doing seminars, doing, other types of things to reach people. I want to use Keepin It Rio for what it's designed for, which is to help promote people. And if we can maybe bring 1 or 2 people out of the millions that watch this episode to you, and they say, hey, you know what? We really like her attitude. I said yesterday, I asked Chris, has Priscilla ever been mad before? Because you're the most bubbly, joyful person I've ever met. And just hearing the story and knowing, you know what, there's a story behind it, and it's probably something that's taken a lot of work to get to. I respect and appreciate you 100 million times more than I did when I just thought you were just a bubbly, friendly person. So that's pretty awesome. But we've got people all over the world watching this. I've reached as far as the island of Vanuatu, and we've got, I think, our number 2 most popular place is New Zealand. So we've got a worldwide audience, and someone's watching this today, and whatever we've said at some point in this 40 minutes thus far has really resonated with them, and they want to learn more. They want to maybe work with you. They want us to maybe be around people that are going to be more positive, people that are going to help them get to where they need to go, and you're the answer to their prayers. How do they go about making it happen?
Oh, I have, my Facebook is just Priscilla Hale is my name, and I'm posting content on there, just positive, trying to do it daily, but also giving myself some grace on that, but try to show up there daily just with a positive word, to keep going in the day, to keep that. So that's one place to find me. And then did create a 30-day just inspire your life kind of, it's a video program with questions if you want to do the questions or just watch the video a day. It's like 20 minutes, and that's it's a stanstore.com/Priscilla Hale. And that's one thing that I've created that's out there. But I try to put a lot of content on Facebook and then share where I'm up to or what I'm up to on other things you can find out there.
I love it. And I think I highly encourage everybody to follow you because, like you say, you're the most joyful person I know. And it makes me happy just to see other people happy and smiling and doing what they love to do. And there you go, folks. You need to do it. So let's shift gears just a little bit, okay? We've had a pretty good, solid conversation. It's been pretty serious. We've covered some great topics. I think we've helped some people. I want to get a little bit more lighthearted now, if you will. And I don't have anything prepared, but like I say, you guys are family to me. We're in the Rio Blanco roofing family together. Y'all are stuck with me. And in the year plus that we've been working together with the roofing company, I've got to, know your family quite a bit. I love you guys all. You're outstanding to be around, and I'm very grateful for that. And one thing that's been kind of cool is you guys have relocated from a relatively large city to what I would basically consider like, y'all don't even have an address. Like the GPS, you have to have coordinates to get there. And I've gotten lost even trying to just use the coordinates. So 2 different ways of looking at this. I know that you grew up there in Bartlett, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a young girl growing up in a community that probably had, I would assume, less than a few hundred people in your high school, I would guess. And then, moving into a larger, as you grow up and move on into adulthood, what was it like for you going from one extreme to the other? And then I'm going to also ask for the perspective maybe of your kids who have gone from that extreme to this one and what their thoughts are of going from, bigger to small and yours from going from smaller to big. What was that like for you?
It was well, for me, I always wanted to be city. I don't know what that is, but I was just always more city-minded than farm-minded. However, my first job was testing grain at a grain elevator, like getting grain out of trucks, testing bushel weight and moisture from grain. And so I definitely had that growing up, would sit in the back of a tractor with my dad baling hay, that kind of thing. And then to being where there's everything you want, every kind of restaurant, not only every kind, right? Every kind of food from every culture where the city we came from, literally hundreds of restaurants and things to do. So I did very much enjoy the convenience side of things and enjoyed that stuff a lot. But where we got so crowded and so busy, it became a bit much. And but in telling you something funny in that, some of my city experiences, my kids pretty much grew up city. They would visit my parents and stuff, of course, on weekends or summer. And, so they had a little bit of farm understanding. But often one of my daughters would be like, Mom, you're 1A showing. So from my little 1A high school life to them going to 6A high schools was kind of funny and times and handling things. And then I was quite concerned about, we just decided it was time to make a change. Our youngest, we felt like just needed a different environment. And so moving, she was very much resisting. Like, I don't want to leave. I like my little life. And and my other daughter that was at home she was more like, no, let's go, let's do this. And when we got here, the little one was like, I love this. And the other one was like, yeah, I miss my friends and I miss this and that, so it was just really interesting watching all of us adjust and realizing, yeah, there's no Target 5 minutes away. There's not even a Target 40 minutes away.
Yeah, it's so cool to see that. And I love that perspective. And I thought, that's typically how it works. One is not looking forward to it and ends up being the one that loves it, and vice versa. And I think that's amazing. When I go over to Bartlett, I just smile because you get off the highway and it's almost like, okay, I must be pretty close. And you just start driving. And I start second guessing the technology, thinking, oh my gosh, like, I've gone too far, I haven't gone far enough, whatever. And you realize it's just corn, and you just see nothing but corn. And I literally have had to turn back around because I hadn't gone far enough, but I thought I'd gone too far. So that's pretty amazing. And I love that. And I think it's cool that you guys have a place out there literally in the middle of nowhere. And it's beautiful. I think that you guys are going to enjoy life out there, and just that's pretty awesome. So
yes, I'm thankful for the new experience. And it is neat. My the daughter that kind of went, what did we just do? She has a brilliant mind and interest in things, and decided she wanted to work on the farm. So she is now deep in working on learning cattle, learning tractors and trucks and all the things. So it's very fascinating, all the experiences we have in life. And like, once again, back to how we just touch so many different people, and they're getting to experience a whole nother group of people as well. And we still have our friends from all the places we've been, but we just, in each one of us, all of our life is like that. No matter what we're up to, we're always getting to do new things and experience new people and learn from it. Some of it we love, right? Some of it we're like, what was that? And getting to just glean wisdom from it all.
that's it. And that's all we can do. We can learn from our mistakes, from our triumphs. We can make the best of it, because really that's all you can do. If you make the worst of it, it's just going to drag you down. And I always tell people, this conversation has been great, because it always brings me back to the moment that I realized that I don't care what other people think of me. And it was literally my own mom on her deathbed. And she realized at that moment, I don't know what she realized, but she still hated everybody that had ever done her wrong in life, and was just really not forgiving of any of that stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, I got to let this pettiness go. I can't have these kind of things dragging me down in life, because that does not look like a fun way to exit the earth after a productive life where you got to experience a lot of things. And I've let go of everybody that I don't need around me, and I've forgiven anybody that's ever done wrong by me. I don't go back and repeat those behaviors, but it's definitely healthy to be able to do that. So I appreciate this conversation. It's been absolutely amazing. And it's cool for you and I to get to sit down for an hour and chat. We haven't really gotten to do that. And thank you for taking the time. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to do another one somewhere down the road. And one day we're going to get your husband on the podcast as well. And we're going to hear his story of life and what it's like putting up with a somewhat erratic individual such as myself, while trying to be the organized person that's running a successful business. So I'm sure Chris has stories as well of, the little Chuck doll that he goes and punches in the face a few times in the garage. And I appreciate that. So thank you to Chris Hale for not killing me. Thank you to the entire Hale family for letting me be a part of it as well. I couldn't be more honored to share the journey that we're all on, and I think we're all going to be greatly successful. So that is my take on that. Before we sign off and bid adieu to our millions of fans, is there any final words of wisdom that you'd like to impart on the Keepin It Rio audience today?
Yes, actually, I want to just say, if there's a thing you're afraid to do, I encourage you to do it. I think that is almost the most important thing to listen to is what you're afraid of, and face it. And if that's overcoming a fear of something, if it's something as simple as going, I'm not going to be afraid of that anymore, like speak those words out over your life and just do a new thing, whatever it is. It's so powerful. And our fears sometimes are the very things we're talented at. That I was afraid of doing this. I think, Chuck, you said you were afraid of stepping out on social media, and it's where our gifting is. So sometimes those fears can really lie to us and hold us back. And so I just encourage you, look around your life too. Vocabulary, one, but then is there something you're afraid of? Because is that really what you're called to do? Is that, taking that step of faith of sending out a job resume to somewhere you've always wanted to work, or trying a new skill? And I have to share one quick funny thing with you. I was terrified of the lake my whole life. And the biological family I met, that's all they do is camp and boat and lake. And so when my littlest, when we met, she was 18 months old and stepping in the water, and talk about, right, leap of faith, just steps in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to be a mother. I can't let the 18-month-old in the lake alone. But I'm like, I'm going to die. She's going to die. We're all going to die. And it's become one of my most fun things now. I love to paddleboard. Like, it is just sheer joy to me, paddleboarding. And I've also learned how to wake surf on a boat in the lake. And it's become one of my most treasured times with my family. But if I would not have had, I kind of feel like my littlest forced me to get in the lake, because I have to be a responsible parent. But it was just like, had that not happened, I would miss out on so many things I love doing now. I have seen so many beautiful areas paddleboarding through different rivers and lakes, and it just delights my heart. And I have had some of the most beautiful time with other people paddleboarding with them, and same like boating. So I just want to encourage you, if there's something that you've been afraid of, maybe step out and try it. And of course, we get to use our sound mind and reason. We want to definitely be smart about our life, but there is something to that leap of faith. That there is something to that. Just go for it.
Oh, I'll tell you what, that's the story of my life. I remember in 2010, I got an invitation randomly out of the blue to relocate to North Carolina to open a branch of a roofing supply company that I was a truck driver for 12 years. I had no experience. I had no expectation that I would ever get this opportunity. But you know what? When I went in, the first thing they said was, if you need to think about it, and you know what my answer was? I don't need to think about it. This is fate. I'm supposed to do it. I moved to Charlotte. I'd never met the guy that I was going to run the company with until the day I got there. We built it up. It was good. Not my thing. I relocated to Texas, where I had never met a human being, one. And I ended up working at a roofing company because I met a owner of the business at a restaurant prior to, heading back to North Carolina. I was literally just there on a trip. And the whole Rio Blanco thing, I don't know if Chris has ever told you this story or not, but Rio Blanco was founded 12, 13 years ago. We bought it in 2019, myself and a couple buddies. It was out of business. And this was another leap of faith. I literally got asked a question, where would you like to open a roofing company office if you were going to do it? And I had never thought of San Antonio, Texas, not once ever in my life as a place where I would even visit. It just never crossed my mind. And when they said, hey, we have a company, it's out of business, you're going to have to go to a place you've never been. You're going to have to go find a bunch of people that you don't know, and you're going to have to introduce yourself and show this brand and build it and do all that stuff. And it sounds like a crazy thing, but here I am. I literally came down here. I'd never been to San Antonio before until the day I got here. And we resurrected the brand. We built it up through a whole bunch of other things, and twists and turns in the story. We're in a completely different situation now than I was then, but I still firmly believe that this is the right thing to do. And maybe if someone gave me a psychological exam, they'd say you're crazy. But you know what? I think it's my purpose, and I think that it was meant to be. And here we are. our goal now is to make this company the most successful thing that it could possibly be. And I think we're in position to do that. And it all started with, yeah, sure, let's go to San Antonio. That sounds great. And it's been awesome. I still can't find my way around town because I have no social life, but our business is doing well. We're having a great time. And I agree with you 100%. It never would have happened if I would have been afraid. Who knows where my life would have ended up had I just never done any of that. So that's huge. And I appreciate that perspective. That is definitely wisdom for everybody. Words to live by. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an amazing episode 255. I appreciate everybody for watching. I appreciate you, Priscilla, for being here and for sharing your story. And we're going to continue to follow this, obviously, for many years to come. One thing I do need to do before we call it a day here, got to give a shout out to my sponsors. And I'll tell you what, we've got the greatest sponsors in the world here on Keepin It Rio. It's roofer.com. I'm sure you've probably heard a thing or two about Roofer in your household because we use Roofer with Rio Blanco for everything we do. They have been amazing to us. For the last 7 years, I've had a great relationship with Roofer. They've been our sponsor for 4 years, and they do so much to help our business, to help us, just stay out there. And thank you, Roofer. If you're not using Roofer, I don't know what's wrong with you. I say this every week. Use Roofer. Your life will be happy. You'll be great. Life will be good. You'll get a lot of stuff done. You'll have more free time to go play golf on a Tuesday like we did yesterday. So shout out to Roofer. I appreciate you guys, the fans that watch Keepin It Rio. I always joke and say millions and millions, but one day a million sets of eyes are going to see this. It may be 300 years from now, but if you're the millionth, we appreciate you just as much as the ones that are watching now. So thank you guys for that. Until next Thursday, we know the deal. Keep on keeping it Rio. We'll see you guys next week. And Priscilla, stick around for 1 minute after we're done here. We will conclude our conversation, but there you go, folks. We'll see y'all next Thursday.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payment in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for free today.